Hello and welcome to the webinar. My name is Dr. Steffanie Stecker and I am the owner of Mountain Vista Psychology, and I am a psychologist, and I am here to talk to you today about ADHD testing and diagnosis, what you need to know about the process. So what we're going to learn today, we're going to learn what the characteristics of those with ADHD have, what the benefits are to getting tested and diagnosed, what to look for in a qualified evaluator, the process of the evaluation, and the next steps you can take. So let's dig in. First, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So again, I already told you my name is Dr. Steffanie Stecker. I'm a licensed psychologist. I've worked with kids, teens, families for almost 20 years. I'm the founder of Mountain Vista Psychology, a group practice with amazing clinicians that serve the Denver metro area. I've been working with and diagnosing those with ADHD for almost 20 years. And at the practice, we have helped countless families create peace and connection in their homes and family relationships. Personally, I have been married to my husband for almost 20 years. I have a grown stepdaughter and a son and a daughter in their teen years. As a family, we love hiking, traveling, and skiing. And I would say that not only do I understand ADHD professionally, I also understand it personally. All right, so let's get going and talking a little bit more about what ADHD is. So if you may have heard the term executive functions, and people with ADHD always have executive function difficulties. Those with executive function difficulties do not always meet criteria for ADHD. So people with executive functioning challenges may have some of the criteria for ADHD, but not meet all the criteria. Let's talk a little bit more about what the criteria for ADHD are. So there are three types of ADHD. There's primarily inattentive, primarily hyperactive impulsive, and combined presentation. With the primarily inattentive folks, those are the folks who often get missed. They are not as obvious as the primary hyperactive impulsive. The primary hyperactive impulsive, those are the ones, who are, you imagine the kid, right, who's running circles around the room, crawling up the wall, touching everything. That is hyperactive impulsive ADHD. But there's another kind too. So that's what I want to spend some time talking about first, because I think it's important that we start catching the people who struggle with primarily inattentive ADHD a little better than we do, so that they could get support. So there's 9 criteria for primarily inattentive ADHD, and you don't have to meet all 9 criteria, but we'll walk through all 9 to see if it sounds familiar. So the first criteria is someone who often fails to give close attention to details or makes careless mistakes in schoolwork, at work, or during other activities. So someone who may overlook or miss details or is inaccurate. And when I think about this, I think about, the school age kiddo who maybe misses reading directions, right? Or has a hard time with when it's addition, maybe doing subtraction, or with the longer math as kids get older, doing all the steps, or missing punctuation, or accidentally putting things away in the wrong place, those sorts of things. And as adults, it's missing the details in work. And if you're an adult and this is something you struggle with, it's already ringing bells if it's you, right? All right, then the second criteria, often has difficulty sustaining attention in tasks or play activities. So this is sitting through class listening to the teacher without mind wandering, sitting in conversations that may not be a topic of interest, and still staying present. The other thing I hear a lot about is with reading. A lot of people with ADHD don't enjoy reading. Some do, but most of them don't, because as they're reading, especially if it's not a book they've chosen, their mind will just check out. They'll be thinking about other things, and they'll get to the end of a paragraph or end of the page, and they won't remember what they've read. So then they'll reread it, and it'll happen again. So they'll reread it, and it'll happen again, which is, you can imagine, that's super frustrating. So they don't love to read. We also see that people with ADHD, reading comprehension is not as developed. So they may be able to read well, but comprehending what they read is harder because, again, their mind is wandering. Those with ADHD often seem to not be listening as well in conversation when spoken to. So you may need to get their attention, or as an adult, you may fake it, right? You may you may have learned a way to act like you're listening when your mind is wandering. All right, so the fourth criteria: does not follow through on instructions, fails to finish tasks, such as schoolwork, chores, duty in the workplace. So this is starting something and having a hard time finishing it. This is the kiddo who goes upstairs to put their shoes on, and 20 minutes later, no shoes are on and they're doing something else, right? And as an adult, this can be the same thing, where you start doing something, and if it's a bigger project, you may get bored of it and move on. So you may have a bunch of unfinished projects that you start, you get really excited about, but the follow through is a challenge. That is one of the symptoms of ADHD. All right, criteria 5. Often has difficulty organizing tasks and activities. And organization can show up in a couple of different ways. One can be more of like a mental organization, which is breaking down projects, planning, like say planning your child's birthday party. Again, projects in school is a really big one. Organizing your writing so that it's structured in a coherent way. It also can show up as poor time management, having a hard time getting out of the door on time, showing up late. And then it also can show up as being disorganized, as in messy desk, messy backpack, messy room, right? Number 6, often avoids, dislikes, or is reluctant to engage in tasks that require sustained mental effort. So in childhood, this is avoidance of schoolwork. And in adulthood, it can show up in the same way. Those bigger projects for work just make your stomach tie in knots because you don't want to sit and do it. It's almost physically painful to focus that long on something that you're not highly interested in, which is another important caveat. Those with ADHD can hyper focus on things they're interested in. This is something that's so confusing to them and the people around them. You think, well, if my child can focus on video games for hours on end, why can't they do their schoolwork? It's a choice. And actually, what happens is people with ADHD have an easy time focusing on novel or high interest activities. Their brains can zone in on the things they love, which is a gift. That is why so many people with ADHD are such successful entrepreneurs, or they're successful. There's a lot of people in the professional realm who have ADHD because once they're in that realm, they're doing for an occupation what they love, and they can hyper focus. So that is a huge gift people with ADHD have, but it's often confused. Like, why can you focus in one area and not another? And it's part of the profile. All right, 3 more of these criteria for primarily inattentive. So often loses things necessary for tasks or activities. So this is misplacing paperwork, phones, keys, wallets, all the things, right? Like water bottles, lunch boxes, all those sorts of things. You put them down, they don't end up back home where they're supposed to be. You're running around looking for them when you need them. That is something that happens frequently. The next one, often distracted by extraneous stimuli. So this, a lot of people with ADHD are more sensitive to background noise, right? Like if a pencil drops, if there's people talking in a conversation next to them, they'll have a harder time focusing on the conversation they're in. So some of those extraneous noises, but for older adults, this could just be unrelated thoughts to what they're doing as well. And the final criteria for primarily inattentive ADHD is often forgetful in daily activities. So you intend to finish your chores, you intend to run your errands, you intend to return your phone calls, and then it doesn't happen, right? And that's super frustrating for everybody, but it's not intentional. It's like if you don't do it right away, it just leaves your brain. And so, and doesn't come back until someone's frustrated. Okay, so that was the primarily inattentive type of ADHD we just talked about. You could see how that a lot of those things are things that end up in some ways hurting the person who has ADHD more than those around them, because they feel like they're failing at things over and over and over and over. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I misplaced it. Oh, I made this stupid error. Oh. And so they end up not feeling good about themselves in that way. The primarily impulsive hyperactive type, this is the type that most often gets more visibility. It's the kid, like I said, running in circles. And so these people often get diagnosed earlier than the inattentive type. And again, you can also have, if you meet enough criteria from both, you can have both. Okay, so often fidgets with or taps hands or squirms in seat. And for older adults, remember that a lot of these things you've learned not to do. And so you just feel really restless and it's hard for you to sit still rather than still doing some of these things. But for younger kids, they're just squirmy worms. Often leave seat in the classroom or in other situations in which remaining seated is expected. So you think schoolwork or school. Some people talk about church, that being the case. The third criteria, runs about or climbs excessively in situations in which it is inappropriate to do so. And again, older adolescents, adults, you may just feel restless. And then often has difficulty playing or engaging in leisure activities quietly. These are the loud players, like no matter where you go, it seems like their energy is so big and their sounds are so big that they're noticed. They're on the go. Act is driven by a motor. I'm thinking as little kids, when you're out and about, they're running ahead, they're running circles around you. And again, older adults, this is restlessness, but this is also a lot of older adults with ADHD and teenagers, they like engaging in high impact or high risk activities where they're getting a lot of sensory input, and which can be, again, really helpful if there's a sport they love or something like that. Then often talks excessively. So these are people who it can be hard to get a word in edgewise when they're enjoying what they're talking about. And they may not pick up on the social cues if that's doesn't feel good to other people. Okay, these are the last three of the primarily impulsive hyperactive type. Often blurts out answers before questions have been completed, so interrupting. Has difficulty waiting turn in conversation, and often interrupts or intrudes on others, so butts into conversations, games, you get the idea. Okay, so again, this is really important to me that I convey this. These are not character issues. These are brain differences. or it is due to a brain difference that these things show up, I should say. So when we think of physical health, you think of cancer, broken legs. I'm trying to think. Oh, eyesight. Eyesight is an analogy I use a lot, where you need glasses. We don't think of these things as something where we blame the person who has them, right? My poor eyesight, it's not something that's a character issue of mine, it's a physical issue. The same is actually true with ADHD, right? We know there are brain differences. This is a physical difference that is expressed behaviorally. Okay, so what does that difference look like? So when information travels neuron to neuron in the brain, there's an electrical reaction as well as a chemical reaction. And the electrical difference for ADHD, for most people, it's in excess of a brainwave called theta. It's a slow brainwave. There are some others who have too much what's called beta, which is a fast brainwave. So that causes struggle with focus. Chemically, it is people have lower dopamine and lower norepinephrine. People with ADHD are also 4 times more likely to have a relative with ADHD. And ADHD changes over time, but it is rarely outgrown. This is super important because we used to think that it was a childhood thing, and as people got into adulthood, they didn't have it anymore, and that's actually just not true. All right, so the benefits of getting tested. There are going to be differing benefits depending on when in the lifespan someone gets tested. At MVP, we test and diagnose people throughout the lifespan. So I will address benefits I most often see for younger kids, then I'll talk about them for teens and then adults. So with younger kids, parenting and educating kids with ADHD has unique challenges. When your kiddo has a hard time getting together in the morning and getting out the door, that's stressful. When you have to ask 5 times for them to get their shoes on, that's stressful. When, depending on the type of ADHD, they're impulsive and not able to sit in school, so you're talking to the teacher a lot, that's stressful. If your child is leaving a child trail of stuff all over the house, right? That's stressful. So there's an extra element of stress and an extra element of support your kids need if they have ADHD. And I think it's super important that if these kids are supported and understood, they can have more positive family relationships, school experience at school, and sense of self. Because the thing is if you got to put those behaviors in a bucket, right? That's what we do. We love to make meaning out of kids. That's what humans do. So if it is not a brain difference that your kid needs support and they don't have the skills, so they need to be taught the skills, then what is it? What I hear is it's a defiant issue where they just don't care. So it's a character issue of your kids. So that's why I think it's so important to identify this early so that we're not putting our kids in a bucket that just doesn't fit them. If it's ADHD, they need the structure and support in place. Kids who are diagnosed with ADHD can also often receive support from school to get their needs met so that school doesn't become as frustrating and they don't get a negative sense of self academically. And if they're diagnosed via more complete evaluation, then their overall learning profile and emotional profile is also understood so that they can be more fully supported. So for example, a lot of people with ADHD have memory or processing speed differences. Their memory and processing speed, one or the other or both, are often not as developed as their other abilities. Well, that's good information to have, because if our kid needs more time to do something, we need to show up and support them in getting that, right? Okay, older kids and teens. Many older kids, teens, their parents have experienced some hurtful times if they have not yet been gotten this diagnosis, because again, things have been put in the wrong bucket. Understanding what's going on with the kids has often been misplaced to character or motivation or something like that, right? Defiance. The other thing is, for some kids, they can go through elementary school and ADHD is not, it's not as big of an issue. It's not seen as much. And then when the expectations increase in middle school, when they have multiple teachers, when they have assignments they need to track, there's not as much hand holding. Their executive functions just aren't there in order to do it. So they end up with missing assignments, incomplete assignments, those sorts of things. And the parents are going, what the heck is going on? Well, the hard part is that collides with puberty, right? So it often can be misunderstood as them just not caring when actually it is ADHD. So getting tested creates understanding, explanation, and assists in developing new ways to address these longstanding difficulties. Just like with younger kids, older kids may benefit from receiving extra support in school and or extended time on tests so they can demonstrate all they're capable of. Okay, so adults, let's talk about adults. By the time someone is an adult, they may experience diminished self-worth due to symptoms of ADHD they've lived with through their lives. And getting an ADHD evaluation in and of itself often validates their experiences, creates understanding, and creates healing in and of itself. A lot of these adults feel like, what's wrong with me? Why am I so lazy? You know, why can't I just do all these things I want to do? And going through this evaluation process and getting a complete evaluation helps them be able to understand their experience in a new way and learn what they can do to move forward so it's not as frustrating. Adults can access language and community. There's a lot of community around ADHD to support them in their own understanding and also help them communicate with loved ones about what's going on for them. Finally, there are many adults who benefit from accommodations in college if they're college age or going back to college. And if not, we've also worked with a lot of adults who choose to get an ADHD evaluation to support a career change. You know, maybe they have been in a position where a lot of their performance is evaluated on paying attention to details, and that's just not the sphere their brain works best in. All right, let's talk about how to find a qualified evaluator. Questions to ask. What is the wait list? A lot of people have wait lists, so how long is it going to take to get in? How long after the evaluation is complete before I receive my report? Some people do a quick turnaround on reports. Others take a lot of time, even months. I would be sure that you're going to get your report within a few weeks after finishing the evaluation so you could use it and share it to move forward and get the help you need. Will the evaluator look at other things that could be impacting me? This is really important. You don't just want to have someone look at your executive functions. You really want to get a more thorough understanding just in case maybe it's not ADHD, maybe it's a trauma you experienced, maybe it's anxiety. Maybe you have those things in addition to ADHD going on. Maybe for a kid, it's a learning disability. You really want to have someone to look at all the different facets so that you could get support going forward, because it's not just about a diagnosis. It's really about creating your best life, right? All right. I didn't put one question on here I want to say. I would say also, what's the experience of the evaluator with ADHD? Is this an area of specialization? And that's not a question I have on the slides, but that's important. Okay, then what is the cost of an evaluation? And this varies widely. It varies. You don't want to just know about the cost, though. You want to know about what you're getting for what you're paying. So what is the cost of the evaluation and what's included in the evaluation? And then, do you want to use insurance or not? Some people don't want insurance used because they don't want a diagnosis following them. Others really want to take advantage of their benefits. So that's a very personal choice for you to choose. The process of an evaluation. Diagnosing ADHD, again, my belief is best done in a comprehensive manner so you can be sure to get an accurate diagnosis, but also get the support you need moving forward. So what's looked at in a comprehensive evaluation? Really, you want to get a really good developmental history and clinical interview. And then based on that, there may be some things that are looked at in addition to this list that I have here. Through that developmental history and clinical interview, you and your evaluator may choose to add in something like learning disability of testing as well, or dig deeper into some emotional pieces, or I have sensory integration up here. So dig deeper into that, right? But I would say at the very least, you want to look at learning profile, because again, working memory and processing speed can definitely be often impacted in those who have ADHD. Your executive functioning, what that looks like, emotional wellness. So is there any anxiety or depression or anything like that going on? And sensory integration. And there are very standardized, respected tools to do and look at each of these things. Once the evaluation is complete, a thorough report is written. The report includes information from your evaluation and recommendations based on the evaluation that you can use to move forward. So some of these recommendations will be more standard for people who have ADHD in general, but some of them really need to be based on your unique profile. What, for example, are you someone who struggles with working memory, anxiety, and inattentive ADHD? What sort of recommendations would be most helpful for you, given how that constellation looks and is expressed in your life, so that you can really move forward in a good way? Finally, the feedback session takes place in which the evaluator reviews the testing results, diagnosis, and recommendations with you. And this is your opportunity to ask questions about anything you need to know moving forward. You can then take the report that you get and share it with the people you would like to share it with so you can get the support you need. And I really want to emphasize, this is not just about a label. This is about understanding your or your child's unique experience in the world, given what is going on in all the testing results, so that you can take that information. And again, it's really about creating that best life. So what I would encourage you to do, if you think you or someone you love has ADHD, please don't wait. Go get an evaluation, understand what's going on, so that you can really get those interventions in place and create understanding and move forward. Knowledge is power. And again, this is not just about a diagnosis. So next steps. There are many wonderful psychologists out there who do ADHD testing. If you want to get more information from us, I have our phone number here, 720-583-9332. Email is info@mountainvistapsychology.com. And our website, in case you would like to learn more about us, is mountainvistapsychology.com. We do offer a free 20-minute phone consultation if you have any questions about the testing process. And again, if this is something you think may be impacting either you or someone you love, I just encourage you to get an evaluation, because like I said, knowledge is power, either through us or, like I said, there are many wonderful psychologists in the community. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.